The love of extreme sports is often passed down from generation to generation, and today's story is about a family that was always chasing new heights. The parents, Vladimir and Yelena, were famous Soviet climbers, and their daughter Maria was a child prodigy who conquered peak after peak by the time she was 20. Together, their family was on the precipice of becoming mountaineering's greatest stars, but fate had its own plans. What tragedy awaited this 21-year-old star athlete? Maria Khitrikova was born on June 28, 1990, in Dnipropetrovsk, a large industrial metropolis in Ukraine. Now a city of more than 1 million people, it was considered important in the Soviet Union due to ferrous metallurgy, metalworking, mechanical engineering, and other heavy industries. Maria went to Dnipropetrovsk National University with a major in physics, electronics, and computer systems. In 2021, in her junior year, she was considered a diligent student who got all her work done despite her intense hobby. She was a good student, said the dean of the faculty, Professor Valery Dolgov. Despite her passion for mountaineering, Maria coped with her studies, and she didn't take any academic leaves for the sake of her record-setting ascents. Her parents had been in love with the mountains since they were young, and soon they began to prepare their daughter for mountaineering. Maria saw the mountains for the first time when she was 4, and ever since then she was drawn to the peaks. Vladimir and Yelena hoped for many family trips in the future, but then tragedy struck. Yelena died when Maria was only 8 years old.
My brother and I were taken to Crimea from the cradle. From the age of 4, they started taking us to the Caucasus. While my parents were on the trail, we were at the bottom, and sometimes we went up with them for the night. When I was 8, my mother died. Along with all the other emotions I felt, this made it clear that I really didn't know her. But I wanted to. I also wanted to go where she was. So, the mountains it was. I wanted to climb the same 7,000-meter high peaks that she did. Korzenievskaya, Lenin Peak.
Her father, in memory of his beloved wife, had no plans to stop mountain climbing. On the contrary, seeing that Maria shared his interests, he decided to teach his daughter everything that he knew and loved himself. He taught her not only the landscapes on the peaks, but also how to behave in the mountains. Always think about safety and about your comrades, and never leave them in trouble. Vladimir Khitrikov knew firsthand how important cooperation was in the mountains. More than a lover of mountains, he was an eminent climber and instructor who had visited all the 7,000-meter high peaks of the Soviet Union and conquered the 8,000-meter Himalayan Lhotse as part of the Soviet expedition. For this incredibly difficult ascent, along with another climber from Dnipropetrovsk, Pyotr Kazachak, Vladimir was awarded the Order of Courage in 1990, just as Maria was being born. The men descended from Lhotse under the most difficult conditions and with severe frostbite, and they were later treated in Moscow. For this heroic descent, they were later awarded medals. As part of the Dnipropetrovsk club, Vladimir also became a 2-time Soviet mountaineering champion. In the 1980s, he was a rising star in mountain sports and was practically a household name. Maria started mountaineering in 2002. She climbed Elbrus for the first time at the age of 12, together with her father in the summer, the safest season in terms of weather. After that, this popular Caucasian peak with a height of 5,642 meters was like home. In 2009 and 2010, during the so-called extreme races to Elbrus, Maria came in first place, and she was starting to be noticed in the sports world. Khitrikova had incredible endurance and strength, and Vladimir supported her in every possible way, helping her finance expeditions, finding sponsors, and giving her advice based on his own experience. He trained Maria, preparing her for newer and newer heights.
For me, climbing is like love. I can't logically explain why I do it. I can only say, go to the mountains. There you can fully feel the breath of your own life.
At the age of 16, Maria climbed her first 7,000-meter mountain, Lenin Peak, in the Pamir mountain system on the border of Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. She had dreamed about it since childhood. In the summer of 2011, together with Polish climber Alexander Dzik, they ascended Gasherbrum 2 in Pakistan without supplemental oxygen. Finally, Maria had climbed her first 8,000-meter peak, but this was not enough for her. She wanted to take on the rest of the impregnable giants. That same season, Maria returned to Karakoram and summited Gasherbrum 1, also known as Hidden Peak, the 13th highest peak in the world, with an Iranian expedition. She also did it without supplemental oxygen. For her perseverance, Khitrikova was given the nickname The Machine and was nominated for the prestigious Steel Angel Award, the most famous mountaineering award for women. By the age of 20, she had fulfilled all the standards to earn the label Master of Sports. She filmed her adventures on camera, often talking about the mountains with both love and a sense of irony. But she also had a sentimental side. She always carried a photo of her mother and a phone so that she could text her father.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Khitrikova. I've been climbing for almost 10 years. My passion is high-altitude mountaineering. I have several 7,000 and two 8,000-meter peaks behind me. This surprises a lot of people. Given that I'm only 21, that is understandable. For as long as I can remember, I have always dreamt of mountains when I slept, and it was always my dream to climb them. For 5 years, my biggest unachievable dream was climbing an 8,000-meter peak. Last year, I achieved it. In one summer, I climbed two 8,000ers at once, without artificial oxygen. This is happiness, when something that you have been dreaming about for so long becomes a reality. Nevertheless, in the end you only want more. More mountains, more climbs, higher, harder, faster. To be honest, I can't live without new goals, without new projects.
This is how Maria talked about herself on social networks. And here's how she sardonically answered when she was asked whether women should be climbing mountains.
What do you mean? A woman's place is in the kitchen, or maybe on the beach, where it's warm and sunny. Definitely not high up in the mountains. It is also cold, you get hungry, and the men are all unshaven and dirty. But every woman who has reached those heights probably has her own butt that helps her choose the wrong place to take vacation every season.
News of the machine's accomplishments soon spread throughout the mountaineering community. Maria was called a rising star of mountaineering, a wunderkind. Everyone who knew about her felt that one day all the world's highest peaks would submit to her. No one would be surprised if she went to Everest or Annapurna. Nevertheless, she was quite modest and tended not to talk about her grandiose plans, maybe due to the superstition in mountaineering that you should keep your future routes to yourself so that nothing happens during them.
After climbing my first 7,000er, Lenin Peak, everything was turned upside down inside. It was a little more than 5 years ago. When you look at the photo of a large white mountain, you feel that your palms sweat, your breathing quickens. And how cool is it to climb a mountain like that? When you get there, you understand that it's like love, not for something, but despite something.
Maria also had plans for the 2012 season. At 8:30 p.m. on March 2nd, 2012, the officer on duty at the Elbrus Search and Rescue Service received a call from a group of climbers descending from Elbrus. The weather that day, as often happens, turned bad, and calls and requests for help from climbers kept coming in. It was snowing, and soon there was a full-fledged snowstorm. Thick fog hung over the peak, and climbers had to walk or rather slide on ice. The temperature on the slope dropped to minus 25 degrees Celsius, and visibility was very low. Many travelers know Elbrus as the highest peak of the Caucasus, Russia, or even all of Europe if you consider that the border between Europe and Asia runs along the Caucasus Range. Its entire slope is covered with glaciers. Recently, like elsewhere, glaciers have been melting quickly, and the weather in Elbrus is constantly changing. It's almost impossible to predict what it will be like. When the group of climbers took to the slopes, the sun was shining, but that didn't last very long. On that ill-fated evening, the 22-year-old leader of the group of climbers called for rescuers. Despite her age, she was well prepared for the role of a guide. There were 11 people with her, and they successfully reached the top. 2 of them, Roman Kutsi from Dnipropetrovsk and Denis Lesev from Kiev, fell behind during the descent, and Maria, telling the others to go ahead, remained to help them on the difficult slope. 8 people made it down to the Garabashi shelter, called the Barrels, but Maria and the 2 men were nowhere to be found. The climbers told the rescuers where they last saw their comrades, and a search party advanced to the top, but they were unable to find the missing people or any trace of them. The rescuers wandered through the snow almost blindly, and despite the fact that Maria had transmitted her GPS coordinates by radio, she was nowhere to be seen. Communication with the girl had been interrupted, and no one else heard her voice. They described her in the Sports Federation of Dnipropetrovsk after her disappearance in the following way. Maria Khitrikova is a very strong and experienced climber. She has been mountain climbing since childhood. And her father, Vladimir Khitrikov, who taught her everything, is also a professional and was a champion of the Soviet Union. Maria was able to conquer 2 8,000-meter peaks in the Himalayas in one season. No climber in Ukraine has as much experience as she does. Therefore, she was never lacking in technical literacy and preparedness. She has repeatedly participated in high-speed races to Elbrus and knows the mountain very well. Staying to wait with the stragglers was the right decision on Maria's part. She was very strong, agile, and well prepared, and she knew Elbrus like the back of her hand. She could help her weakened, tired comrades and lead them back to the trail, and she was well aware of the risks. If she did not stay and help, then most likely Kutsi and Lesov, who already had little strength left, would die. Of course, she could not leave them to the mercy of fate. On March 3rd, the day after they disappeared, when the weather finally cleared up a little, rescuers managed to find Kutsi at an altitude of 4,100 meters. Covered in bruises and abrasions from falls on the glacier, he had severe frostbite on his limbs and was immobile. When asked where Maria and Denis were, he could only say that all 3 of them descended, tied with one rope, and they fell together and slid over the ice, flying about 150 meters. Then Kutsi, apparently deciding to try his luck on his own, went ahead, untangling himself and leaving Maria with Lesov, who was barely walking. The 2, he said, were depressed and not counting on a favorable outcome. In addition, she lost her climbing crampons, and it became quite difficult for her to walk. For some reason, Kutsi had Maria's mobile phone, so she couldn't get in touch with the rescuers anymore. Why did she give it to him? Did she think it would be more useful for him while she was preparing for the worst? Of course, sometimes in the mountains you have to rely on yourself. Maybe if Kutsi hadn't untied himself and gone on his own, he wouldn't have been found in time. But how did he feel leaving his 2 comrades on the slope, knowing that he might never see them again? How did he finally make that decision? Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Maria's father flew straight to the Caucasus. When he arrived on the night of March 3rd, he was ready to take part in the search for his daughter. As an experienced climber, he understood that Maria would not last long alone on the slope of Elbrus. If she wasn't found in the next 24 hours, she would likely never be found, and the rescue operation would turn into a search for her body. Every hour, every minute counted. On March 4th, search and rescue work continued. Lesov's wife and 2 children were waiting for him, and Maria's loving father was searching for her. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, about 30 rescuers walked to the left and right of the main trail to Elbrus, looking for at least some sign of the climbers. The weather was not great, and short pauses gave way to snowstorms. The entire slope was covered with a thick layer of hard icy snow. An hour later, the rescuers' radios went off. Someone saw a motionless female figure on a glacier at an altitude of 4,700 meters, just above the famous Shelter 11. Maria lay alone, dying in all likelihood due to another fall on slippery ice. If she had gone a little further, she would have been safe and warm. After she was found, the weather deteriorated again, as if Elbrus itself was angry at what had happened. Maria was taken home to Dnepropetrovsk, and her climber comrades helped with this. In her hometown, friends and relatives gave their final farewells. "We had bought tickets a couple of weeks ago," Maria's friend recalled. She was looking forward to Elbrus. "It's time. Are you with us?" she said. What impatience I saw in Maria's eyes. It was her favorite thing to do, and now it will always be hers. Vladimir Khitrikov lost both his wife and daughter. Maria died where she felt closest to her mother. Their hearts remained forever in the mountains, on the snowy slopes, and in the rarefied air. Maria stayed to help two guys who were lagging behind. She not only fought against the elements, but also helped save them, because she was the strongest climber in the group. Her last minutes were quite a feat, as was her whole short life, recall family friends. The search for Denis Lesev continued, but no trace of him was found. The mountain took his life and buried the evidence. Perhaps, after many years, as has already happened with other bodies on Elbrus, the peak will return him to his relatives when the glaciers melt. Edward Axelrod, another climber from Dnepropetrovsk who had received the prestigious Snow Leopard mountain climbing award and knew the Khitrikov family well, was never a fan of Elbrus. "I was on Elbrus, I think back in 1973. I said to myself, I'll never step foot on it again. Why? I don't know why, but I didn't like the aura of the two-headed peak for some reason. And it's not only me, the entire Dnepropetrovsk expedition headed by Alexander Seidler suffered from mountain sickness. In a word, we suffered through it." Elbrus has taken the lives of dozens of experienced and less experienced climbers. Most often, these incidents, of course, can be blamed on the weather. Near the peak, there can be snow or a snowstorm at any time. It is impossible to predict what will happen in the next second, and anyone who climbs is aware of these risks. Maria also knew about them, but she still rushed to the top. She will always be remembered as a bright star that lit up the sky for just a few seconds. Her name will forever be associated with Elbrus, and the story of how she selflessly helped her two comrades should never be forgotten. And what do you guys think about this story? Give your opinion in the comments below, and as always, stay safe.